South Australia's Coorong region, already well known for its Angus beef, is fast gaining a reputation for lamb as well. So much so that one local producer is now making a name for himself at the other end of the supply chain as a butcher. And as Kerry Staight reports, customer feedback has led to some dramatic changes back on the farm.
On the shores of Lake Albert in South Australia's Coorong, there's a beef producer who knows a little more about meat than most. Richard Gunner has been on a decade-long journey that has literally taken him from paddock to plate.
10 years ago, I'd worked down here at Meningie every day, checking the waters, marking, weaning, putting the bulls out, taking the bulls in, all those sort of pretty standard jobs, but sort of always had a little mind ticking in the back of what more could there be.
While keeping his family's Black Angus cattle well fed may have been a priority back then, these days Mr Gunner is focused on what consumers at the end of the food supply chain are eating. The farmer has carved out a new career for himself as a butcher, opening 7 shops across Adelaide in an attempt to vertically integrate the business and have more control over the marketing and sales of his family's beef and lamb.
I think there's a stock standard of anyone that's in any industry that doesn't really understand the other parts of their chain, that sees that those other buggers are making all the money out of what you're doing, so you're doing all the hard work and someone else is reaping all the profit, and that view, which I probably don't quite see as being correct these days, but that was a driver at the time.
For someone who's grown up in the meat game, getting a grip on what goes on beyond the farm gate has been more challenging than Mr Gunner expected.
They're completely foreign to each other. The dealing with the elements and trying to bring them all together to produce one animal is your farming side, and then the processing is basically it's pulling one thing into a huge range of different products, and then you've got to sell all those pieces, and they're going off, and it's actually a massive challenge to be able to maximise the value of every single bit.
As well as keeping his own shop stocked, Richard Gunner supplies to around 200 restaurants. A customer base that's far more demanding than the livestock he was used to dealing with.
There's just such a wide range of things, from dealing with farmers that supply us, from our own guys, talking to them through the meatworks, the guys that work in our processing facility, the guys that work in our butcher shops, our chef customers, our distributors interstate, chefs interstate. There's just so many different things. G'day, how can I help you today?
Oh, well, we're looking for steak.
While the move into the butcher business has been an education, Richard Gunner came armed with plenty of marketing smarts.
When you try a whole lot of different beefs from different parts of Australia, you can actually see that they have regional characteristics, much in the same way as wine.
He'd watched his father, former Orlando wine boss Perry Gunner, introduce the Jacobs Creek brand into the UK. And he believed that regional branding could boost returns in the red meat industry too.
70 cents,
Great.
thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
He's also surveyed his customers to make sure they're buying what he's selling.
We got some surprising results. People do want to know where it came from, but that next level of the exact family wasn't something that wasn't as important to our customers. It was still important. We thought it would be naturally number one, but it wasn't actually as important as which particular region did it come from. The additives was a huge one that people didn't. They wanted things to be grown naturally, no extra hormones and antibiotics and those sort of things. So.
Often I am quite willing to pay a little bit more to know where the meat comes from, to know how it's been raised, how it's been slaughtered, so that every time I cook it, I get a really nice piece of meat. Because an animal's died for it. You want to be able to enjoy it. You want to be able to make sure that when you eat it, you appreciate it.
It's valuable feedback that's flowing back to the farm. Like many producers, the Gunners finish off their cattle in a feedlot for 30 to 40 days. Even though this is half the average time for cattle for the domestic market, growing customer concerns about animal welfare have prompted the family to consider other options.
When we started 10 years ago, being grain-fed was an unambiguously good thing, and these days, you know, there has been a large swing towards the idea of grass-fed, but we've seen some problems with the consistency, the quality of the product, so we're doing our best to deliver that product that they like to eat with as minimal amount of grain finishing as possible, and that's where I guess we're looking at setting up a grain finishing in a paddock type system.
Consumers' growing love affair with lamb has also led to a major livestock changeover back on the Gunners' farms. In the early days of the butcher business, the family had around 2,000 cows and no sheep. 10 years on, and there are now 10,000 ewes and half as many cows. Australian lamb has certainly come a long way in recent years. The animals are larger, the meat leaner, and there's a bigger selection of cuts to pick from.
Prices farmers have received in the price in the shops are through the roof, but we're still selling a lot of lamb despite that, whereas when beef goes up 10%, we'll see that disappearance to chicken, disappearance to pork. Lamb holds pretty tough.
And now Richard Gunner, who runs Black Suffolk's, wants to take that lamb to the next level, ironically by increasing the fat.
In beef, you have Wagyu and Angus cattle that command a premium over the basis of their marbling. In fish, you know, you have tuna that, you know, the big tuna that have a lot of belly fat. That's the most prized. So the more expensive meats were generally ones that had that intramuscular fat, and we thought, well, you know, let's look at our lamb from that perspective.
So he turned to Ben Glatz, one of only a handful of accredited breed plan scanners in the beef industry. Mr Glatz has been measuring intramuscular fat, among other traits, in cattle